be up on our YouTube channel. So guys, thank you so much for joining today. I am so excited to introduce you to Dr. Sam Rauchwarter, who is here to share some super valuable insights with us. He is a sports certified specialist in physical therapy and a strength coach with a lot of years of experience working with Team USA Tri. He is also the founder of Performance Haus and the Endurance Physio, where he focuses on helping athletes like us reach peak performance and staying injury-free, or coming back from injury, in my case. So today, Dr. Sam is going to walk us through some key topics that can help elevate us with our training, like understanding gait analysis, building strong support team, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to let him kind of take it away, but he is also, he's a recognized expert in running mechanics, foot and ankle biomechanics, targeted strength training, sorry. And this is a really cool opportunity to learn from one of the best resources in the sport of running and and he knows his stuff. So I'm thrilled that you're here, and I can't wait. I've got a notebook ready to take all the notes. So
all the notes. Perfect. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for joining me. I'm going to share my screen here. I actually have a little PowerPoint that I can kind of go through with you guys. Let me see. Let me get that on. Perfect. Awesome. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
All right. Hold on one second. All right. Let's start her from the beginning. Perfect. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for coming. I really appreciate it. My goal here today is really to help you guys with gait analysis, understanding what it is, how it works, and then also too, maybe giving you guys a few little hints and tips and tricks so then you guys can kind of analyze your own gait, if that makes sense. So a little quick, thanks for the intro, Kirsten, that was great. I'll just give you a little quick synopsis of myself. So I was born and raised in Minnesota, just south of St. Paul. Went to the University of St. Thomas for my undergrad in exercise science. From there, then I went on to physical therapy school at the University of Jamestown in the lovely city and state of Fargo, North Dakota. Great place to go to school. Absolutely nothing else going on there. Love North Dakota, but not my place. Once I was done there, I went back down to the Twin Cities and was practicing for about a year and a half. And I ended up deciding to go and do a sports residency program. So I did that at a place called Body Central Physical Therapy, which was in Tucson, Arizona. And so then from there, I kind of have just gone on and really kind of focused in endurance athletes, if that makes sense. So when we got there, we were encouraged to try and find a niche or niche of what we wanted to do. And so for me, being a triathlete and cyclist and runner, I wanted to really focus in on those endurance athletes. And so now, obviously, I work with a bunch of professional athletes, weekend warriors, and everyone in between, mainly in the endurance world. Also, too, I've also treated NFL players, MLB players, and all the above, all the other professional levels. So currently, I live in Phoenix, Arizona, but also go down to Tucson once a week to help to help people like Kristen and the rest of the community down there as well. Cool. So you guys probably know, you guys are runners, you guys know what gait analysis is, but so I'll kind of go through this really quick. All right. But what gait analysis is it's defined as a systemic study of human locomotion. So we're using our eyes and the brain of the observer, myself, you, other people, augmented by instrumentation for measuring the body movements, body mechanics, and the activity of muscles. Okay, so essentially we're watching to see how your muscles and joints and body moves through space. We're also seeing different things during that analysis. Keep in mind too, I'm going to kind of teach you guys a quick and dirty way of doing a little gait analysis. So keep in mind that this is a skill, okay? Just like anything else, it requires time and practice to perfect the craft, okay? So keep in mind that your first gait analysis that you do on yourself is probably not going to be the most beautiful thing in the world, and you're probably going to miss a lot of things. Know though that as you see more and more people and as you do it more and more often, you get better and better at it. Okay. Why is it important? You guys know this, but essentially identifying any abnormalities. Okay. So we're going to talk about different gait deficits, intent, key things to come here. In my world, it's customized treatment plans, orthotics, exercise prescription, strength training, etc. In my world, it's also injury prevention. So I'm a physical therapist by trade, and so I look at gait analysis and I try and see biomechanical weaknesses and imbalances, whether that's right and left, whether it's quads and hamstrings. I'm looking for all of those to try and see exactly what is going on with the body and go from there. Um, what you guys are probably most interested in is optimizing the performance, right? Finding ways to increase efficiency, finding ways to reduce fatigue. Lowering the risk of overuse injuries is probably the number one reason why people come see me for gait analysis, is to make sure that they don't have those overuse injuries and or they prevent them. So you guys know all that stuff. This is the fun stuff now. How to perform a gait analysis. Okay. So gait analysis can be super simple or it can be very, very, very complex. Okay. I have done both. I've done it simply with the lovely cell phones that we all have, where essentially you take a little photo as somebody's running by, and that can be something super simple. I've also done it too. I've been able to go to a university and use a 20 camera system where they hook up 20 different cameras, overlay all the videos, put 3D dimensional markers on you, which is crazy, so much data, but it was so complex I had no idea what was going on. And I've done this for almost 10 years and I had no idea what was going on when I went and saw that. I knew the basic principles, but it can be as simple or as complex as you want it to be. Okay. I'm going to teach you guys a simple method of doing it. Okay. The simplest method. If you have an iPhone, sorry, I don't know if anyone's an Android user, I don't know if they have a slow-mo mode, but if you have an iPhone, they have a slow-mo mode in the video recording. That can do up to, I think, 60. I think maybe the new one is 90 frames per second, which is crazy because you used to have to get a multi-thousand-dollar camera in order to be able to do that. So when you go into your slow-mo mode in there in the iPhone, you can literally tap and then you can literally scroll back and forth and literally see frame by frame, which is pretty awesome. There are other options too, such as an app. So the app that I have here, it's called OnForm. It's that kind of circle with a little check in it. You can find that. I'm not sure if that's Apple only or if that's on Android. I clearly have an iPhone, so I don't know about Android, but that's a really great app also that you can use and you can measure and do all sorts of fancy things with that. All right. So once we're just gonna, for this case, we're gonna go onto the iPhone slash OnForm app. You open up the app, you record a video. It's pretty simple. And then you get 3 different angles. You want at least 3 different angles if you can. So the first one that you want is from the side at hip level. All right. Then you want from the back at hip level. And then you actually want at the front, and you want that to be at your knee level. Okay. We're going to talk why all these make different sense, but in general, at that hip level, and then at the knee level when it's up in front. Okay. So once you get all those different in there, then you start learning about the phases of gait. Great, I got the video, but now what the heck do I do with it? Okay, this is where we start to teach you how to work and how to use that video and figure out what's going on. Okay, so what we want to do, all right, is we want to figure out and break down the different phases. Okay, so you guys might have heard of stance phase and swing phase. Have you guys heard of that before? You guys familiar with that? Some yes, some no. Okay, let me break it down then. Stance phase is whenever your foot is on the ground. All right, in the most simplest form. Stance phase is whenever your foot is on the ground. Swing phase is whenever your foot is off the ground. Okay, so on stance phase, I have a little 7-part guy doing gait, okay? So we always talk in terms of whatever foot. So if we're talking right stance phase or right swing phase, this is what we're talking about. And obviously you have that right leg that is highlighted there to help you guys out, okay? So stance phase is when you're touching the ground. So that's number one, which is heel contact. Number two and three, which is called mid stance. So that's when heel contact is, I should back up. Heel contact is when your foot initially touches the ground. Mid stance is when your foot is now flat and then you're working your way through and it's starting to come up. Okay. So that's two and three is mid stance. Toe off is your final phase of your stance phase. And that's when your heel is coming off the ground and your toe is also starting to lift off. Okay. Once you're out of stance phase, you then move into swing phase because now all of a sudden your foot is up off the ground and you're free floating. Okay. So you have initial swing, which would be kind of 5. I know it's not on the picture there, but initial swing would be number 5, where your foot is starting to come off the ground. Mid swing is when your foot is off the ground, but now it's passing by what we would consider your midline. So directly through your body, and that's number 6. You can kind of see that. And then you have terminal swing, which leads into heel contact. So terminal swing is when that foot is just about to touch the ground again. All right. And then you have heel contact, which starts stance phase again. So without getting too nerdy about it, you just need to know you have stance phase and you have swing phase. Okay. Stance is when you're on your foot. Swing phase is when your foot is up in the air and you're bringing it into your next one. Okay. With running, you also have what's called a float phase. So now I'm going to confuse you a little bit. Okay. A float phase is a very, very short period of time where no feet are on the ground. Okay. So if you think about walking, right, you always have one foot on the ground. If you guys watch the Olympics, there is a thing called, what is it, power walking, right? Or walking marathon, or it's something ridiculous, right? So
Walking.
the only difference between, what is it called?
Or yes, race walking. Sorry, I thought it was speed walking, but
Race walking. Race walking. Perfect. So, so with race walking, the only difference between race walking and running is that in race walking, you can't have what's called the float phase. So at one point in time, your foot, at least a foot, has to always be on the ground. When you get to running, you can have parts where you are literally floating above the ground. Okay. So for example, between number 5 and number 6, number 4, 5, and 6, you're going to have that float where you, at one point in time, even if it's for a very, very small amount of time, you're going to have both feet up off the ground. Okay. It's the time where you have no limbs contacting the ground. Just important to know that that's in there and that's a differentiator for running. Okay. But stance phase and swing phase, we'll keep it simple. That's kind of what we need to know. All right. Let's see here. All right. So we're going to kind of go geek back out here real quick. Okay. But what is required to run? All right. What I look at when I start looking and seeing runners is I'm looking at all these different things, which seems very overwhelming. Okay. When we talk about anatomical features, we're literally talking about the physical structures of the body. Okay. So your lower limb musculature, your calves, your hamstrings, your quads, your hip flexors, all your Achilles, all the things that I'm sure you guys have heard of because you may or may not have had an injury on them. Okay. Your joints. All right. I'm looking at your feet, your ankle, your knee, your hip, your low back, your shoulder, your neck, your thoracic spine, right? All these different things. I'm looking at your foot arch and how much stability you have or how much stability you don't have. I'm looking at your pelvis and your core. Does it move a lot up and down, side to side? Does it rotate with each other? Does it rotate against each other? I'm also looking at your cardiovascular system, right? How hard are you huffing and puffing? Are you panting and all of a sudden then you change your gait when you get tired? And yes, you do. I'm also looking at your nervous system, right? How controlled is your breathing? How relaxed are you throughout your run? I'm looking at your skeletal structure, right? Do you have good posture when you run? Do you have bad posture when you run? right? I'm looking at all those anatomical things. I'm also looking at biomechanical factors. Okay. So we have your foot strike pattern. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of this, but people talk about rear foot, midfoot, or forefoot strikes, right? And talking about like what's the most optimal, strike pattern. I'll answer that question right now. In literature, there is no optimal strike pattern. Um, People will argue different things, but in all reality, it's normally what you're most used to because that will create less injuries. Okay. So we'll just debunk that myth right away. But stride length and cadence too, I'm looking at, right? So how fast are you doing 160 steps per minute? You doing 180, 190 steps per minute? How long of a stride? Are you overstriding? Are you understriding? Joint angles and range of motion. So I'm looking at, do you have adequate knee bend as you go through? Does your ankle pop up or are you dragging your foot as you go through that swing phase? I'm looking at how much shock absorption you have, right? Loading a lot and all that shock, is that going all the way up into your spine, causing your low back to hurt? Or is all that shock staying within your Achilles and all of a sudden now your Achilles is starting to hurt, right? And again, your posture. Okay. So when we talk about simple and complex, this is the complex side of it again. All right. But lots of different things to look at. Um, there are also a lot of different things that can alter gait, okay, and how we run. Clothing, whether it's loose or tight, okay, whether you have clothing on or not. For example, if somebody runs without a shirt on, that it can oftentimes alter how they're running versus when they run with a shirt on. Okay. Genetics. Everyone loves this one. The thing that we can't help. All right. You got to thank your mom and dad for this one. All right. But genetics. Okay. Some of us are more naturally gifted than others. Some of us have a higher VO2 max than others. All right. But that also has a lot to do with how we run and how efficiently we run. All right. I'm sure you guys have seen, if you ever go out and watch a marathon, that's one of my favorite things to do. I'm sure my wife is probably like, she laughs at me whenever I say this, but whenever I go and watch a marathon, I'm always watching everyone, and you see people have the prettiest run form and they're up front. And then you see people where you're like, I don't know how you're running so fast, but somehow you're doing it and you're getting it. So get it, girl. There's all sorts of different things that can kind of come after it, right? And then vice versa. You see people who are really slow but have beautiful run form. And you see people who are really slow who have ugly run form, right? So there's a lot of genetics that go into that as well. Muscle weaknesses and asymmetries. As a physical therapist, that's what I work on with you in the clinic, right? I can also work on that remotely through some strength training and things like that as well. Some wellness coaching as well. Joint issues, right? For example, I have a bad right ankle, so I cannot flex my ankle back very well. So I have to compensate for that. Okay. So if you have a joint issue, that can definitely affect how you run. Everyone's favorite shoe choice, right? How many of you have over 10 pairs of shoes? Guilty as charged. Yep. Hands everywhere, right? So we all have different shoes. Shoes make a huge difference into how you run and how efficient you can be. Especially too now with the carbon plates in those shoes, that also makes a huge difference. I'll say it right now, please do not train in carbon plates. There are so many injuries that happen with that, but racing, go for it, have at it. All right. And also to the amount of stiffness and where those carbon plates bend is new research that is now coming out to determine, okay, if you run like this, we should try and put you in this type of carbon plate. If we run like this, you should kind of put in this type of carbon plate. But that's all very new and stuff that we don't 100% have clarity on, but is coming. Okay. The surface that you run on, whether you run on trail, whether you run on pavement, whether you run on asphalt, whether you run on hard packed or very technical trails, all that also has different things to do with that. Your running experience. Okay. How long you've been a runner. That makes a huge difference. If you're just getting into running, people have tons of injuries. All right. And that's because they're trying to figure that out. They're putting on abnormal stresses that they normally don't. Okay. So that running experience makes also a huge part of that as well. All right. I'm not going to go over every single one of these, but you guys can read them as you desire. Okay. But these are common injuries that can be caused from poor gait mechanics. Okay. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of these injuries. Maybe, unfortunately, you have experienced a lot of these injuries, right? Stress fractures are a big thing right now that are going on. Muscle strains, ITB pain or iliotibial tract pain, SI issues, patella issues, or kneecap issues. Um, Sometimes too, you get shin splints, which I'm sure people have heard of before, stress fractures, Achilles, Morton's neuroma, all sorts of foot things as well. All right. But just this is a small list, not all encompassing. The point being is that a lot of injuries can happen from poor gait mechanics. Okay. So I'm going to go over this real quick. All right. Because this is the world that I live in. Okay. You have three different things that determine if you're three, three different things that determine if you're going to get an injury. Counting is hard some days. All right. So you have structure, you have mechanics, and you have dosage. Okay. And that leads to your injury threshold. Okay. Those are going to alter depending on what you have. Okay. So structure, for example, we talked a lot about these. This is bony anatomy. This is your muscular anatomy, right? How much can your bones take? How much can your muscles take? Then you also have neuroanatomy too, which is your nerves, right? Sometimes people get nerve injuries and nerve issues. Okay. So if I look at it, what I look at is I see what's the anatomy of the structure at the root cause of the problem. Okay. Is it your bones? Crap, my bones are literally can't take this, so we get a stress fracture. Okay. Crap, your Achilles can't take this, so now we have Achilles tendonitis. Okay. So that's the structure, that's the body component of it. Mechanics. Okay. We talked about not everyone has proper running form, right? But that also too begs the question, what is necessary, right? What type of form do I need? How much do I need to correct? Do I not need to correct it, right? How fast do I correct it? How fast do I not correct it, right? How slow do we go? There's lots of different things that go into the mechanics aspect of it. And you guys don't need to know it all, right? That's where you go and you get a gait analysis from a physical therapist, from another expert like myself. I'm happy to walk you through. This is where my specialty really comes in and helps you guys out, right? Is finding out that mechanics aspect. Then we have volume or dosage, okay? And this is where Coach Kristen comes in, right? Where you have distance, you have hours that you're running, right? You have the steps, the number of foot contacts that you have the intensity, you have the cadence, right? And when you start to figure out that dosage, right? That's why I put that at the end, right? Or at the top here, because you can decrease that dosage and become under that injury threshold. Or sometimes if you ramp up too fast, you're a new runner, whatever, life stress happens, right? And, Kristen tells you to only run 8 miles and instead you run 10. And all of a sudden then you bump up that dose. Yeah, I know you're smiling because yeah, you're welcome. So listen to her. No, I'm just kidding. But for real though, listen to her. And all of a sudden though, then sometimes you can get up over the injury threshold, right? There are other things too. Keep in mind that go into this as well. If you're more stressed at work, that can increase the amount of stress that you have on your tissues, and they'll also increase, even though you went on that 8 miles, and normally that's a piece of cake, all of a sudden that 8 miles now became really hard and it's more like 13 miles, 14 miles, just because of the amount of stress that you have on your body. Okay. But the point being is that it's a multifactorial solution. Okay. And we want to make sure that we're reducing the risk of injury as best we can. You want to heal from that injury and then get back to running as fast as possible. Okay. So the whole point of training is to toggle that injury threshold and preferably stay right below it the whole time. And then your fitness goes up. Okay. But if you guys don't get anything out of this gait analysis, please understand this, that mechanics plus structure plus dosage gives you that threshold. Okay. And that you want to make sure that you're blending all of the above. Structure, you can change by strength training. You can change by doing mobility work, by your foam rolling, by your stretching that you want to do. The mechanics, you can change that by getting a gait analysis. Okay. And then you start figuring out, hey, do I need to change this? Do I not? Am I going to get an injury from this? Am I not? And then dosage, working with a coach, right? And making sure that you're talking and communicating with that coach to be able to stay under that injury threshold. All right. Hopefully you guys wrote that down. If not, here's where you definitely want to write things down, okay? Um, I'm going to try and go through at least 3 or 4 of these, okay? I have 6 here. All right, so time permitting, but I also want to make sure that you guys have some time to ask me questions, okay? So we'll go over crossover gait, we'll go over pelvic drop, and we'll go over overstriding, okay? So those are probably the 3 most common. And so we're going to go over those, all right? So this is the fun part, all right? Remember how I was telling you about how you take a gait analysis, right, from the side, the front, and the back? We're going to talk about different things, and this is how you're going to start seeing things, and it's all going to kind of start making some sense, okay? So crossover gait is when your foot crosses over the midline of your body when it's in stance phase, okay? So if you're running, right, and your foot lands and you cross over your midline, or what would be like, think of like an imaginary line coming down from your chest down onto the concrete or whatever pavement and then moving forward, okay? So if you take that line and you step over it, all right, or cross over that midline, that's what we call crossover gait, okay? So you can see the picture on the right here. See how she kind of stays more in line? It's a little bit more vertical, that line is. Then you have crossover gait, which is a picture or the left picture. And you can see how she kind of starts to cross over a little bit more of a steep angle. Okay. What that crossover is you're crossing through that center line. So I'm going to tell you what it is, and then I'm going to tell you the fix for it. Okay. So I have a drill. I call it walk the line. Okay. So if you have a treadmill, it's kind of fun. Everyone likes messing with their treadmills a little bit. All right. Treadmill works. Otherwise, too, you can also do this outside. I'll explain outside in a minute. But essentially, you're going to take a piece of chalk, like a sidewalk chalk. You're going to measure out where the center of your treadmill um, path is. Okay. And then what you're going to do is you're going to hold that chalk there, and you're going to turn the treadmill on like 0.2 or as low as it can go, slow as it can go. And you're going to put that chalk up against that treadmill, and it'll literally create a line on the track of that treadmill, which is kind of cool. So then what you can get, then you have a midline to look at. Okay. Then see if you can get a mirror out in front of you. So then you can look up and then keep your eyeballs looking down. And then you can see literally if you're crossing over that treadmill back and forth. All right. So you put a center line on the treadmill, and then you can get feedback to see if you're crossing over or not. So kind of a cool little hack there. When you're outside, you can also too use like, like if you're running on a road, be safe, please. Okay. Don't get hit by a car. All right. Be safe. But you can also use too the boundary lines on the car road. Okay. So where the line is for the bike lane or whatever, or the shoulder, right? You can literally use that white line and use that as your kind of crossover point. The goal here is to make sure that just the front, maybe 1 or 2 finger or 1 or 2 toes on your feet. Okay. So your big toe and your first toe or the kind of second toe in there are touching the line. Okay. So just the first couple of toes, maybe even the big toe or middle toe too, if you want, can touch that line. Okay. You just want to make sure that your whole foot is not crossing over onto it. Okay. So don't try and literally step on it, because you're going to do it as a supermodel walk/run. All right. Instead, we want to make sure that we keep our hips about hip width. So normally that first couple feet. All right. Any questions about crossover? Does that kind of make sense to people about that? That's a pretty common gait fault that I see in runners across all disciplines, whether that be sprinting or even all the way out to marathon, ultra marathon, things like that. Okay. So crossover gait. All right. Pelvic drop or pelvis drop. All right. So what it is it's a unilateral drop in the height of the pelvis in what we call the frontal plane. So that's the picture that you're seeing here. Okay, so that's the technical definition. All right. So what will happen is you can see on the top picture A and B. All right. So you can see how our hips are kind of level / she kind of tips even up a little bit. And then C and B, how she just drops her hips crazy. So when you have that big tipping effect, you can also see it too, like on the bottom right hand picture, you see that front angle. See how her hips like drop crazy like that? I don't want to be mean, but she's essentially a ticking time bomb for an injury. Okay, whether it be a stress fracture or a hamstring strain or an Achilles blowout or something like that, because her hips are dropping so much. Okay, normally what that'll mean is that you have what we call contralateral or opposite side muscular weakness. Okay, so for example, let's take that top right photo. Okay, so it's that lady where we're looking from behind and it's letter B. Okay, see how her hips are kind of dropping down into the right. All right. What that means is actually that her left hip is weak. Because what will happen is that left hip will drop, but this side, the side that you're standing on, all right, can't, isn't strong enough to try and keep it upward. All right. So it fatigues and it kind of drops. Okay. I tell people, think of it like this, right? If you're doing a bicep curl, right, and you're holding something right here, and over time, that's going to get weak and you're going to drop it, right? What happens though in this gait pattern is that it happens really fast because our body weight is something that I don't think we can. I mean, I can't bicep curl my body weight. I don't know about you. Maybe you can, but I know I can't, right? And then you also run into the fact too that when you run, you're putting 3 to 9 times your body weight into your joints, right? So we don't have muscular studies because that would kind of hurt. If you put a needle in somebody to measure how much force is in when they're contracting, that doesn't feel very good. There's some ethics behind those behind those studies that we can't do. But we know though that that much force is going onto your joints. So we can only imagine that there's a lot of force that's going on through those muscles as well. Okay. So when we look at the pelvic drop, my guess is that you're probably, if you weigh, say you weigh 150 pounds, okay, my guess is that you're probably having to hold up 300 plus pounds of force, okay, at least 200, at least 2 times your body weight, trying to hold that up. Oh, and by the way, you're running really fast, so it has to react like that. So it's really, really challenging to do. The cool part about it is that the fix is really, really easy. So there's a muscle in your butt, your booty, called the gluteus medius, okay? Everyone's familiar with the gluteus maximus, right? Everyone's heard of that muscle before. It's the Kim Kardashian muscle. Everyone, right? Everyone knows that one, right? The big butt muscle when we think of the butt, okay? The glute medius sits right underneath that. All right. It's a smaller muscle and it literally controls your pelvic stability, how much pelvic drop you have. Okay. So that gluteus medius is what's responsible for the pelvic drop. Some super simple things to do. I'm sure you guys have heard of monster walks or clamshells, things like that to help engage your gluteus medius. Okay. So that's a really easy thing. If you don't know, feel free to reach out. I can tell you what more gluteus medius things are. Otherwise, too, you can always do a quick Dr. Google search, and I'm sure you'll come up with about a bazillion different things of how to work your glutes. Okay. But that glute medius is really important for that pelvic stability. Okay. Does that make sense to everyone? Does everyone kind of understand what pelvic drop is, how to identify it, and then how to potentially fix it here? Has that dropped? All right. Cool.
Do
We'll go
you?
on to, go ahead.
Okay. I'll save my question for the end because I think it applies to everything. But yeah.
All right. Save it for the end. We'll get it there. All right. This is the next one that I see the most, and that is overstriding. Okay. So, this, if people don't know what overstriding is, essentially it's an excessive distance between where your foot lands at initial contact. So when your foot initially lands to where your center of mass is. Okay. Meaning that the rest of your body. Okay. So for example, we have the picture here. Number 1 is overstriding. See how he's way reaching out? His leg is way extended and he's landing way back on his heel. Versus then you have number 2. See when he initially touches, his body or his foot is pretty much directly underneath him. That's how we define overstriding. Okay. The best thing to do is to look at your what we call your shin vertical at initial contact. Okay. So we look at your shin bone and we want it to make sure that it's within 5 degrees of zero. Okay. Plus or minus 5 degrees of zero. Okay. So you have a little 10-degree window that you want to be at when your foot initially hits the ground. Okay. So if we back it up and we're kind of bringing things full circle here. So if you start and you have your iPhone out and you're taking a quick peek, right? And you're seeing and you go, oh, okay, I'm looking at it from the side and I scroll and all of a sudden I freeze frame on the spot where I first initially touch. All right. Then you look at your shin angle. Okay. If it's plus or minus 5 degrees, or if it looks like it's pretty dang, I mean, we want it to be pretty dang close to vertical. All right. Then we know that you're appropriate. If you're not, so you can see this person's shin angle on number one, see how their shin angle is kind of kicked way out, right? So if we were to take off their knee and we were to drop just a vertical line straight down, you get that angle. That's the angle that we're looking at. Okay. So number one, their angle's, I don't know, probably 20, 25 degrees if we measure that, right? So he's way kind of kicked out. Number two is actually back the opposite way, right? So you can see his knee and his shin angle is actually negative, which is a good, not necessarily a bad thing. That means that he keeps his foot underneath him right away. The fix for this, shorten your stride. It's that easy, right? Shorten your stride. All right. Oftentimes try and increase your cadence. How you can do this and how I coach people to do this is to use metronome. So to shorten your stride, essentially just speed up the beat, right? The cool thing is too is that there's so many playlists out there now on Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, whatever you use, where you can literally type in 180 steps per minute playlist, and you will literally get songs that have 180 beats per minute beat. Pretty simple. Then you just run to the beat, right? So something like that where you're able to make it really easy is the best way to try and improve that. All right. You can consciously think about shortening your stride, but good luck after about 2 miles trying to consciously think every single step to shorten your stride. It's not going to work. That's why I like people using a metronome. There's free metronome apps, or you can use that playlist and then just run to the beat. Okay. All right. Overstriding. Perfect. So where does this leave us? Information overload is the answer. But the biggest thing that I want to reinforce with you guys that the gait analysis is complex and it's multifactorial. Okay, so there's a lot of different things that are going on with the gait analysis. All right, there are many common dysfunctions, like we talked about 3, that can be easily corrected with some simple cues. Okay, or some simple strengthening or stuff like that. All right. The point of this was really to give you just something to at least start messing with or start taking a look at, being just conscious of gait analysis. Okay. If it gets too complex, please consult a physical therapist or a running expert or somebody who knows injuries who can help. I'm more than happy to help look at your gait analysis. I'm more than happy to do a gait analysis on you. But just know that if it gets too complex, please reach out for help. Okay. Technology is coming. Okay. This is kind of a cool little slide here. So there's lots of, oh, can you guys hear that? Sorry, it's kind of noisy, but essentially I'm going to play that again. These are some really cool foot inserts that are coming. They literally slip in your shoes. They're paper thin, literally paper thin. And you can see the device here, little like loops back onto your shoe, and watch where the pressure, it's pressure mapping. So watch where this goes. So I'm rocking forward and backward there, and you can see the red and the yellow and the blue. And then you see that white line. Watch for the white line. So that white line is your center of mass, right? So we can literally tell where your center of mass is when you initially contact and literally pinpoint exactly if we need to improve things or not. So kind of cool. All this technology is coming. There's in-shoe mapping, there's 3D kinematics. With AI, there's going to be so many different things coming out where you can use a lot of the different data. Okay. All right. So that leads me real quick to remote gait analysis. All right. So this is something I want to talk to you guys real quick about, but it's also super important. Okay. So I offer a service called remote gait analysis. Okay. Where essentially you guys as the athletes, you send me videos from 4 different angles. So I know we talked about 3, but I want 4. Okay. So we're going to go front, back, side, and side. Okay. Because I want to tell what your right side and what your left side is doing. Okay. It then gets analyzed by myself, the endurance physiotherapist. Um, and then from there, I give you guys a detailed analysis sheet with individual recommendations for your gait improvement. Okay. So I put my little sheet right over here on the right-hand side here so you guys can see it. I go through all of those on both your right leg and your left leg. And what I literally break it down and see what's normal, what's not. And then from there, I decide, okay, hey, you're really overstriding. We need to decrease that stride. We need to shorten that up and figure out what we want to do. Okay. I'll give you different gait techniques. I'll also to take those because I can see people's weaknesses and muscles and stuff like that. And then I'll give you guys like 3, maybe 4 exercises for specific strengthening exercises that you could do that would help improve your gait. Okay. So what happens is you'll send those 4 videos. I'll analyze them. I'll send them back to you. And then we get on a Zoom call and I go over this sheet with you. Okay. So I'm going over every single thing in here. I'm telling you what's the biggest thing, what to worry about, what not to worry about. Okay. I'm very specific and picky on this sheet. So if I think it's mild or severe, I'm going to put severe. Okay. Because I want to take a look at the things and say, hey, this is your highest injury risk, this is a medium injury risk, and this is a low injury risk. Okay. And then based off that, we talk about how to improve your gait. Hey, I really see these things. These are really things that you need to work on, like ASAP. Hey, these are things that like to work on, like 1 or 2 runs a week kind of thing. And then also to, hey, here's 3, 4 different exercises. And I'll give you a PDF of those sheets of those exercises so you can help kind of jumpstart your gait analysis. Okay. Um, Normally for this remote gait analysis, it's $249 or $250. For you guys, thanks for coming on the call. Thanks for listening to me blab on for about 40 to 45 minutes here or so. But thanks though for letting me do that. So for you guys, I want to give you a little discount, a little sale price. So for you guys, it's $199. So if you guys have any questions, by all means, I'm more than happy to answer those too. But a little just some thank you for listening to me talk and thanks for coming on the call. And hopefully you guys will use some gait analysis, whether it's with me or someone else in the future. Question time, but I'm going to leave it on this slide. So it's all my contact info. Okay. So there's my Instagram, Performance Haus is my sports physical therapy company. I'm also at the Endurance Physio as well. So I have 2 kind of companies that I use there. That is my cell phone number. So if you guys have any questions, by all means, please reach out and text me. Okay. If you guys are curious about gait analysis or anything like that, that's also to my work email there. So feel free to get out and respond and reach out to me on that. I by far am much faster at sending text back than I am emails. So if you guys want a faster response, please text. But I will also email you back. So with that, I will open it up to some questions. What questions do you guys have about gait analysis or the presentation or anything in between? Or physical therapy or strength work or anything like that? I got 1 question there. Yep.
Is that me?
I don't know why it's not letting me see. Yep.
My hands
Yeah.
up. Okay, cool.
Kirsten, if you want to kind of facilitate who it is, because my screen is I can't see people's names
Oh yeah, I
for
got
whatever
it.
reason. But yeah, go ahead.
All right. So I have 2 questions. And I don't know if this is normal or abnormal, but one thing that I notice with the difference in seasons, specifically with it getting colder out, maybe just because I'm stiffening up more, that I feel that my gait changes a little bit. I don't know if that's a normal thing, but when it's warmer out, I seem to feel a little bit more flowy, whereas when it's colder season, it gets more tense and that can affect my gait. So do you ever recommend people getting analysis like twice a year or in different parts of the seasons?
Yes. So overall, yes. I'll definitely address all of those questions. So when it gets colder, our tendons get stiffer, our muscles don't have as much blood flow to them, and our joints aren't quite as lubricated. Okay. So by lubricated, and I don't mean like physically lubricated, I mean like there's fluid in there. And think of it like molasses. Okay. That's probably the best analogy that I can put to it, right? You warm up molasses or say maple syrup. People don't like molasses nowadays. You warm up maple syrup, right? And it flows really fast, right? Because it's hot, it's warm, it goes, right? When you put maple syrup in the fridge, right? And then you pour it over your pancake and you're like, come on, come on, right? You're shaking it, you're squeezing it, right? And it's moving slowly at the speed of snail. That's the same thing for your body as you warm up. Okay. So is your gait different, warm versus cold? Absolutely. 100%. It is way different when it warms up versus when it's cold. Okay. And you can even see that like within a run. Okay. So if you warm up, right, or say you don't do a proper warm up, right? Say you're time crunched, right? And you're like, oh crap, I only have an hour. I have a 45-minute run and I have an hour lunch break and, I'm 5 minutes late. I got to go, right? And so, you do like a quick, little sprint back and forth down the hall or whatever, and then you go out and run. Okay. I used to live in Minnesota. I used to run outside in the winter all the time. What happens is those joints and muscles don't have as much blood flow. And so you don't feel that flow, right? Really as quickly. All right. That's maple syrup, that synovium within your joints isn't quite warmed up yet. You don't have that blood flow going to your legs. You're not warm. And so, yeah, you'll feel stiffer. You'll feel tighter. You won't feel like your stride is the same. And then as you warm up, right, if you have proper amount of clothing on and you get nice and warm and you get a little sweat on, right, then all of a sudden you get proper blood flow. Your joints are now moving a little bit better, right? You get that blood in the joints and the muscles, everything in between. And all of a sudden you feel that flow a little bit. When it's warm out, for example, in the summer, I live in Arizona and it's hotter than Hades up in Phoenix. All right. In the summer, it's like 115, right? You don't need to do a whole lot besides step outside and do a few quick warm-up exercises and your body is warm, right? So it's definitely different warm versus cold. And like I said, you can even see that difference in like a cold weather run when you start versus when you end. Your gait will even change throughout there. In terms of getting gait analysis and the frequency, depending on how many things you're working on, right? So say, for example, you were to come for a gait analysis, right? And we did one in November here, okay? And you're like, okay, we have a few things that we want to work on. Great, I'll see you back in 4 months, 6 months, okay? There might also be times too where I go, hey, gait analysis, hey, I want to check in with you in a month because you have a lot of red flags. I'm like, holy crap, you're taking time bomb for injury. I don't want you to get injured. Let's really hammer these and let's do another gait analysis again in a month, right? Let's check back in a month. How's your strength coming? We're working on 3 different things. We could tell that you had weakness here. So now all of a sudden we're taking that and we're going, okay, now we need to see you more frequently to make sure that everything is like on point and you're making sure that you're getting the care and the recovery and the gait that you need, if that makes sense. Does that kind of answer all those questions? All right, thumbs up. Perfect. Awesome. Who else has a question? Does anyone else have a question here? I know I threw a lot at you guys.
Let's see. I have a question. I think as we not we because as in me because I live in Arizona, but as
Yeah.
the weather changes, more and more athletes are going to be doing a lot of their shorter runs, sometimes their only run of the day on a treadmill. How much does the gait change? How much does the treadmill affect the gait change? And are there any tips or tricks that you know of to like keep it together?
Yes. Okay. So another thing, just like shoe choice, has been debated heavily. Doing gait analysis, what we call on a treadmill or what we call over ground, which is essentially just running on the ground, is a very heavily debated topic, mainly because at first people thought that their gait changed significantly on the treadmill, right? We all know running on treadmill, right? It feels a little bit different, right? Because something is moving under you and you're not moving over it, right? So it is slightly different. What they've found is they put together, if you guys are data geeks and analysis, they put together a meta-analysis of over ground versus on treadmill running gait analysis. And they went and tried to see, hey, is it really that big of a difference when you take somebody over ground versus on a treadmill? And the answer is no. So, meaning that what you see on a treadmill and what you see on the ground, over the ground, is almost identical, which I was pretty personally very surprised about because of how different it feels for the athlete. But when you actually break down the biomechanics, because there's so many factors and a lot of the factor is genetics, which I know we talked about, because a lot of those factors are genetics, you run the same on almost both, if that makes sense. Now, when we talk about dosage, right? Some people have very stiff treadmills. Some people don't. Some people have a lot of flop in their treadmill, right? A lot of cushion in their treadmill, shock absorption, right? They'll market it as whatever, depending on the treadmill company, right? Versus if you run on pavement, if you run on asphalt, or if you run on like crushed gravel or mixed trail, right? And then even within crushed gravel or mixed trail, right? Like Kirsten and I in Arizona, like that is very hard. It might as well be asphalt or concrete because it's so dang hard. But where I grew up in Minnesota, whenever you were on a trail, man, that was cushy soil. That felt great. You know, it was soft and squishy, and it was very much more like one of the like super squishy, treadmill kind of feels to it, right? So long story short is that when you do analysis on treadmill versus over ground, the difference is very, very, very minimal. And what they found is that it's not statistically significant enough to say, yes, you need to run over land and we need this huge, crazy setup versus no, you can just put it on a treadmill. Does that make sense? You had something else in that question too, and I forgot what it was, so forgive me.
No, you're good.
Yeah, I was very surprised.
Having a conversation with Taylor the other day about this and was like, I think with like a lot of times I have been told that you see a lot more low leg injuries when athletes run more on the treadmill. So like that I was wrong, which is an okay thing. Yeah. But I have two more questions, and like athletes, feel free to interrupt me. These questions are based like on what I've seen in coaching. And one thing that keeps coming up now, particularly with a coach named Jason Koop, is he's put together a research paper about the difference between cadence on the road versus cadence on the trail. How do you see a significant impact in like doing one gait analysis on a treadmill versus like how does that cadence, how does that gait, stride, structure translate to the trail?
I'm not familiar with that paper, but let me just take a few quick guesses and you correct me if I'm wrong. Generally speaking, they thought that the cadence, they probably had shorter strides on the trail, would be my guess. And that their cadence, they might call it slower because of the time between each step, right? Because you kind of have to more place your foot where it's supposed to be. Is that correct?
Yep, that's
okay. The gist of it. All right, lucky guesses here. But in terms of like on the trail versus like treadmill gait analysis, most of the time those mechanics are going to be roughly the same. The biggest difference is that when you're on a trail, it's really hard to work on your gait. Like really hard. I don't know if you guys have ever tried to alter your gait on a trail. It's really hard, especially technical trails. Good luck. It's impossible. Right? Because you're so focused on where it is and where you are, right? If you're going to step on a rattlesnake or a tarantula or something like that, right? Hopefully you guys don't have all of those where you live as well. But like, there's so many other thoughts that are going on through your mind, right? Oh, when was the last time I drank, right? Do I need more hydration? Do I need another gel? Like, do I need to eat? Am I okay? Like, oh, those clouds look kind of dark. Am I going to get rained on, right? Like all these thoughts go through your head as you're running. Right. And what happens is that you naturally gravitate back towards your natural run form, right? So whether you're on a trail or whether you're over ground or whether you're on a treadmill, right? Normally what I tell people is when I have them in my clinic and I say, hey, we're going to do a gait analysis today, right? I distract them with all sorts of things. I'll put on a TV, I'll put on news, I'll tell them to put in an earbud, right? I want all sorts of distractions to the point where they're not trying to feel like they're like, oh, look, I'm running so proper, right? Because I don't want that to happen. I also too will tell them, and I think Kirsten, I think we went through this, and I'm like, hey, I want you to run for 10 minutes. I'll see you back in 10 minutes. And sometimes I'll leave, in my clinic, I'll literally leave the room because I want them to get bored and not think about how they're running. Does that make sense? Because I want them to revert back to what they naturally want to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they know that they're being filmed, and I'll actually give them a hint too. Sometimes what I'll do, Kirsten, you don't need to know this because I'm giving away my secrets here, right? But when they're in the clinic, what I'll do is I'll have them run for 10 minutes. I'll turn on my camera at different spots. I'll turn on my camera and be like, crap, I gotta go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. I don't actually have to go to the bathroom. Okay. What I'm doing though is I want them not to think, hey, I'm being recorded. So I know I'm giving away all my secrets here now. I shouldn't be doing this. But what that does though is I'll just delete the first 2 minutes that I'm gone. And then I'll only focus in on that last minute where I come back. Because I know after 2 minutes of running pretty and proper, eventually you're going to break down and you're going to run how you normally do. Right? Because you're going to get tired and fatigued. Right? And I want to see that version of you. Right? I don't want to see oh, I feel good. It's the first mile of the marathon. Yeah, I feel great. Yeah, of course you feel great. Right? I'll even sometimes too, I'll have people go out and I'll say, hey, go do your run. I want you to come in on a hard run day or a long run day. I want you to do your run. And then I want you to come in. Right. And then once they come in, then all of a sudden, then I can see like, oh man, they really break down. Now they're tired, now they're fatigued, right? Now they're all of a sudden going to break down. So that's kind of what I'll do to try and address that. But that was a lot of me rambling on, but hopefully you guys got a few things of it. But bottom line though, is that I'm not concerned of how you look on the trail versus how you look on a treadmill. Because if you're fatigued and stuff like that, and if you end up doing the remote training, I'll literally tell you, hey, make sure you go for a run beforehand. And also too, I want you to take this video after you ran on the treadmill for 10 minutes or so.
You evil
So
genius.
hopefully that, yeah, I know. It's the seat, I guess. I don't know. But it ends up getting a lot better results. Some people are like, oh, I didn't realize that you were recording me. I'm like, I know. That's the whole point. Right? It's because during a race, right, you know when the guy on the photo is, right? They tell you, oh, look, photo coming up or whatever, sometimes in races or, you see the flash or whatever, you're like, oh, look pretty, look hard, look, I'm running hard, like, angry face or smile or whatever, like, and then all of a sudden you change your form. So I don't want you to change your form because that's not how you run most of the time, if that makes sense.
That's so smart. There's a lot of times in training logs at the, like, I'll put in run 14 miles or whatever, but we're focusing on fueling and form and maintaining form when fatigue sets in. Because a lot of times that's when, like you said, the form starts to break down.
Can I add in on that real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. So another pro tip that I use with a lot of athletes is when coaches say work on form, or when I say work on form, what I mean is I want you to work on that form, and I want you to set your watch if you have a timer, or if you I literally have had athletes make a playlist where it will bleep. It'll just go beep, right? Or it'll have a beep for 10 seconds every 5 minutes of song. And at that bleep, they know, oh, crap, am I crossing over or am I not anymore? Right? And so then all of a sudden it's a cue to go, oh, wait a minute, check my form. Okay, cool, right? And so you can literally build in those type of cues where all of a sudden where you're audibly hearing it as well, right? And where it's like a reminder, right? Some people too will set things on their watch where it's just repeating. right? Where that is repeating over and over every 10 minutes, he'll or whatever, right? And so then every 10 minutes they have like, oh, I gotta check my form. Oh man, I'm falling out of it again, right? I need to work on that again. But that's another way too that you guys as athletes and Chris and you as a coach are able to now all of a sudden learn how to like cue for form and make sure that like those 14-mile runs where you say, hey, just work on nutrition and form. Great. Now they know, hey, every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, I was working on form, right? And then that way it's just a more consistent thing. And before you know it, then that consistency, you learn more and more of that form, and then you're doing it more often than you're not, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's so smart.
Yeah. Sorry, I had to add that nugget in. I heard it and I'm like, oh, it's too good. I got to add it in.
No, I'm so glad you did. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for doing
Yeah.
that.
Yes,
Does
absolutely.
anyone else have any other questions?
Yeah, I know like my heart rate strap combined with the watch will do, I forget what they call it, like running dynamics, or something like that, which just has some
On Garmin.
basic
Yeah.
yeah, it's like ground contact time. I think it shows you
Hmm.
kind of like left and right balance, maybe a few other things. Um, is something like that actually helpful at all, or is it just like data that isn't really worth paying attention to?
Kind of. So you're like, great. Is it black or white? No, it's gray. Perfect. No, let me explain what I mean by that. So um, very similar to like wrist heart rate, right? We all know that you have your Garmin, right? And that the wrist heart rate is accurate-ish, right? So it's accurate-ish, right? It's essentially when you go into using those run dynamics. I haven't seen any studies on that. That doesn't mean that there aren't any. It just means that I haven't read any of them. Okay. So I think it's accurate-ish in terms of the running dynamics, right? Like what I mentioned before with like some of the feet things, this guy, right?
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you're getting super accurate things, right? In order to be able to like correlate those, because those insoles are like just coming out. I don't think that they have a really, really good way of determining if those running dynamics are accurate or not, right? Some of the very first force plates, that they now have like mentioned that 20 camera system, right? University of Wisconsin has I think like a 16 camera system, and they have a 20-meter long track of nothing but force plates, which is really cool, right? Tons of data, but also too like they would be the people who have to determine that. And also too, they need to be able to pull that out of that watch at that exact step correlates with this exact step that we see on the camera. That kind of makes sense. So it's really challenging to, how can I say it? It's really challenging to know if those running dynamics are accurate or not currently. I correlate it to like the equivalence of like using heart rate strap, right? Which is like the technology that's like incoming versus like using, like your Garmin watch, heart rate, it's accurate-ish, right? But also too, there have been times where like I'm lifting and I'm like squatting, I'm doing all sorts of stuff, and my heart rate says 102, and I'm like, there's no way. I'm huffing and puffing, I'm dripping in sweat. There's no way my heart rate is 102, So like, I think you kind of got to take that a little bit with a grain of salt, but that's a great question though. And I think that's something that like you will see more and more companies trying to get into and trying to prove that their system is accurate. Because if they can prove that their system is accurate, they can charge more money, right? And then also too, then they could, which everyone, yeah, perfect. Let's buy the new watch, right? Black Friday's coming. Great. And so that's something that I'm sure that they are looking into. And also too, the better the technology that they have, the more accurate they'll be with a lot of other things as well, right? So I think that's something that will be really cool to see how that works, or if Garmin just kills that project altogether. I don't know. I'm imagining that they put a lot of time, energy, and effort and research into that, but it's a couple of accelerometers in a watch and what you're doing with your arms, right? If you are moving one arm, but you're not moving the other one, right? Then it's not very accurate. Or if you're moving one more than the other, right? That's also too, that can create some inaccuracies. So it's more a matter of data and like being able to kind of fish that out. So I would say take it with a grain of salt. It's a good starting point. Some data is better than none, but I wouldn't by any means be like, oh my gosh, like I'm totally changing how I run based off these Garmin, analytics. I love Garmin. I got one. I have so many Garmin watches over the years, but I just don't see it as super accurate yet. Yeah, that's a great question, though. That's a great question. Sweet.
All
We got another
right.
question.
Yeah, we got one more from Taylor. All right, Taylor, you're on mute.
Fire away.
There we go. Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
There we go.
I'm new to Zoom. I just wanted
You're live.
I just wanted to make a comment in regards to when you're talking about the like ways to fix some of the issues, like with the overstriding and the like lower leg issues. Is I did have a gait analysis. I had like perpetual shin splints, and did like a gait analysis, and it turned out like my normal stride was like 163 cadence, and I did the whole metronome thing for like a week and a half just to quicken up my cadence above like 173, and zero issues with shin splints ever since, focusing on just that. So just like, yeah, confirming that if anyone does deal with the shin splints, that whole, I just put on a metronome and just run with that on, or put on a playlist. And now that's like one of the only metrics I look at when I'm running, is making sure that my cadence is like over 170, and I've had like zero issues since. So that's just to like kind of confirm that that type of stuff like really has worked. Within a week and a half, I haven't had shin splints since. So
nice. That's awesome. I'm gonna give you another nugget here for shin splints. All right. Toe taps.
Okay.
So just tapping your toes, not your heels. So keep your heels on the ground and tap your toes. And if you do those, do it until your shins are absolutely on fire. You can't do it. Then relax. Then just do it throughout the day. People who build up that similar, because that's a very similar, that tibialis anterior is what you're working. So it's that muscle on the front side of that shin. So that muscle is what works eccentrically, meaning that it lengthens while it contracts to try and slow down. And if you can strengthen that muscle, it will also take some of that stress and strain away from those shin splint areas. And that'll also decrease having any shin splints too. So shin splints, I literally have had some high schoolers come in track and field normally, because then they get back into stuff. And they come in for an eval. I do the whole eval, do the process and everything. And one of my things always is just tap your toes during class. Tap your toes during class. And they all come back in like a week or two. They're like, I don't have any shin splints. I'm like, I don't know why. Amazing. Right. But oftentimes, though, if you can just tap your toes, that will also help with shin splints as well, besides cadence and everything like that. Yeah, that's awesome, though, Taylor. That's a prime example of like a gait analysis and figuring out where there was a high injury risk, and all of a sudden making that a low injury risk, which is great. And that's the whole point of gait analysis.
So cool.
Is that toe tapping while you're sitting or while you're standing, or how? Doesn't matter.
Whatever.
Cool.
Athlete choice. Yep. I normally tell people to sit, because I feel like you get a better burn that way. And also too, then that way you're not totally like you're putting weight into your heels and trying to lift up, because then you kind of feel kind of wobbly. But normally though, I'll just tell people just sit and do it. Yep. So everyone should be toe tapping right now if they're not. Perfect. All right, great.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Does anyone have any other questions, or can wrap this up and give Sam his time back? But this has been awesome. This has been so cool. I'm gonna link all of this information, his contact info, into our newsletter that'll go out later today. But Sam, you are just a wealth of knowledge, and I appreciate you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And if anyone has any questions, by all means, like feel free to reach out. Even if you have a question about like a running injury or whatever, I'm more than happy to help people. Like the endurance community is my they're my peeps. So I love helping those people. So yeah, thanks for having me on, Kristen. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for coming and listening too. It's
Cool.
awesome.
Hopefully, Sam, I'll see you on Thursday. In Tucson. But yeah, this
Hopefully.
is incredible. So I think if anyone has any questions, text Sam, reach out to him. He look into or seriously consider the remote gait analysis. I've seen him do this in person and it's fascinating. And I've been working with him for a year, so I cannot recommend him enough. If I could, I don't know how that would look, but he's incredible.
I appreciate it.
Big fan.
Appreciate it. I also do too. I'll give myself a little plug too. I also do remote. I can't call it physical therapy, but I call it remote wellness. So if you guys have other questions about that as well too, I do that as well. We meet over Zoom as well. So that's another service, as well as the strength and conditioning, as well as the gait analysis, and also some remote stuff too. So if you guys don't live in Arizona, by all means, you can still reach out and I can still help you out.
And hopefully we'll all be in Arizona soon for a team, ideally.
Hey,
Hey, working on it, but we'll figure it out. So cool.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll see you guys then. Maybe I'll see you guys at the camp. Yeah, it'd be awesome.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I hope you guys all have a great weekend. Happy Friday. We made it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.